Okay, I just would like to make sure that we are all here with our minds and brains, so I would suggest if we can have a very quick movement activity to make sure that you checked in perfectly in our session. Would you please stand up? I might suggest something to do, but if you have a brilliant activity that would energize us, mostly welcome to suggest. Do you have something? Okay. Yeah? Yeah, okay. So if you can just move your legs while you are standing very slowly. Okay, no worries. Okay, maybe faster? A bit faster? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Please take your seats. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Youssef Arrouj, and I'm founder of the Mediterranean Youth Foundation for Development. It's a youth-led organization based in Egypt and Estonia, working to enhance the regional integration and youth participation in the Euro-Mediterranean region. Also, we are really thankful for the Faith Pavilion and its organizers for giving us this a chance among 70 or even more youth organizations and faith organizations worldwide. Actually, in our session, we are going to discuss three main words: climate, Mediterranean, and faith, and how all these words are linked to each other. And now it's the great chance to introduce my amazing speakers, Nirenga Tutanami, MYF advisor, and she's also a PhD student in Harvard University and Fulbright Schumann Scholar. She's active in the field of climate change, and she has been working with and for youth over 10 years. And I have to my right Mr. Mohammed Igaz, partnership manager at Youth Think Green. It's a youth-led organization in Egypt, and he's part of the Youngo Alliance, and he's active in the field of climate change for more than 6 years. Actually, during the next 30 minutes, we are not going to speak to you only, but also we are seeking some interventions and some suggestions from your side. And our session has two main purposes. The first purpose is to navigate more how can youth take the lead in order to tackle climate change and its impact, especially in the Mediterranean region. And the second thing, what religions can do in terms of climate, environment, and human solidarity. In this sense, I would like to ask you a very quick question. When I say the Mediterranean, I mean the Mediterranean Sea or the Mediterranean region. What comes to your mind? Please.
Well, I live in Malta, so it comes to my mind sort of every day when I wake up, though I'm not Maltese. Do you work with the Union for the Mediterranean Secretariat in Barcelona and with the UNEP MAP Secretariat in Athens? What is your association with these two intergovernmental structures?
Yes, we have a strategic partnership with the Union for the Mediterranean, and recently we implemented the third edition of the Mediterranean Youth Academy at their premises in Barcelona. Our organization aims to bring the youth component in the Euromed regional cooperation, because we believe that youth component or youth cooperation is still a weak component in the integration process. So this is the portfolio that we are focusing on. But again, when I say the Mediterranean, what imagination you have, what conflict areas, what food, like food, water, whatever you have in mind.
All right. Okay, I think of Sicilia, because that's where my dad's family is originally from.
Perfect.
Partially, so.
Okay, perfect.
And I think of the Afro-Mediterranean when I think of the Mediterranean, that there's the underappreciated Afro part of the Mediterranean.
Okay. If I connect the word with the climate, would your image be changed or still as it is?
I guess I think of Medicanes too, like the hurricanes that are in the they call them Medicanes now, storms that just whip up and will destroy cities within 2 or 3 days advance notice.
Yeah, thank you. You can come here, come back.
Yeah. So yes, so Husna behind me, Dr. Husna said something I was going to say, which is it's a place of death. It's a place where people who are trying to escape poverty, violence, and discrimination in other parts of the world, in part induced by the climate change that we're experiencing, and they're seeking a better life. So coming through from sub-Saharan Africa, through the Sahara Desert and trying to cross. But also, I mean, I was reading today about 300 Pakistanis that died in a boat on its way to to Greece earlier this year as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I come from India, and thank you so much for posing that question. For me, I think Mediterranean is very underrated. For me, when I hear the word Mediterranean, it is very underrated. It's very critical, it's very important part in the whole geopolitics and in the energy ecosystem. But we don't have much of discussion on Mediterranean. In terms of climate change, I am not saying that we don't have narratives on refugees or other things. But I think in terms of the climate change, in terms of, bringing people to a very happy ending, I don't see it. So for me as an Indian, and it's very personal, that for me Mediterranean is very critical, but we are lost in some conversations sometimes.
Okay, thank you. It's really interesting to hear from like a different perspective who are outside of the region. Please.
Thank you. Imam Shafi Abdul Karim from Nigeria. The Nigerian context of the Mediterranean is something that calls for serious concern. In Nigeria, we have the two seas coming together. I mean, when you have the Atlantic Ocean flowing into the sea itself, and most times these seas have been polluted and they are not respected. There are a lot of dredging of the sea, especially in Lagos, where we have both the sea and Atlantic Ocean. And along the coastal line, down to Ghana, you will see that a lot of pollution along that line, that even the animals under the water have swum away. They are no longer there. And this has caused a lot of issues in terms of, it's not about the climate change itself, it's about the people who are not being, sensitive to issues of the Mediterranean and keeping the Mediterranean safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm really thankful for your interventions. And just very quickly to share with you like 3 facts about the Mediterranean region in terms of the climate change. The Mediterranean region is home to more than 500 million people. And by 2025, by 2050, the water demand is projected to be double or even triple. And the last surprise thing that our Mediterranean region is warming 20% faster than the global average, which means that we are getting affected negatively by climate change more than any other region in this universe. In this sense, I would like to take the chance to address the first question to my colleague Mohammed Agaiz. Mohammed, you have been active in the field of youth and climate actions for more than 6 years. Based on your experience, how can youth movements and youth initiatives effectively contribute to the adaptation mechanisms? The Secretary General of the UN said that the time to stop climate change is over, and now it's the time to adapt. How we can adapt?
First of all, thank you so much, Yusuf, for inviting me to this event, and thank you all for your interest. I'm very sorry because I came late and I have to leave early for a bit for a consultation process with the presidency. But of course, you bring a very important question on the youth initiatives and the mechanism of the adaptation. Right now, as you mentioned, the area of the Mediterranean is 20% affected, and maybe at certain points in the year doubled the effect on climate change And for sure, this is creating crazy reactions on food security and water and poverty, and is not just getting us this way, but also it creates a threat for displacement for a lot of people who are living in this area. And of course, the Mediterranean area is still suffering from the displacement and the migration all the time. And the next one is the what we call it climate migration. It's important to address that the majority of the Mediterranean population are youth, and the adaptation is not just a concept of adapting with the warming, or we are focusing on like getting physically or in a physiological way that we adapt with the climate change, but of course on another sectorial focus. So for example, if you are talking about the food security, we need to ensure the adaptability of the agriculture techniques, and for sure the food system in our countries. For sure, the water security is creating this kind of challenges. And I believe that the initiatives that the youth are trying to provide all the time to create these solutions is playing the crucial role in adapting with the climate change. If you are talking about the adaptation from just a perspective of being able or resilient, because right now we are not talking about adaptation only, but we are talking adaptation and resilience at the same time. I believe the youth are having the power to innovate, and using the knowledge and science to be armed with the exact direction or the right direction will create this pivotal role on addressing the innovation for facing the climate change challenges and adapting with it. So what we need right now is to invest and finance the innovation of the adaptation technology, because all of the global north are not this ambitious about the adaptation technology. It's not a commercial at the end of the day, so they prefer to go for the mitigation, and of course the countries that are suffering, countries like us. So I believe what we need to focus right now is to create this kind of funding mechanism for the youth in the Mediterranean through gathering partnerships. I believe the partnerships between the Mediterranean countries is important. We are not having just geopolitics intersection points, but we also are having the same characteristics when it comes to the agriculture and also the weather and so on, so we can create this kind of leveraging together. And I would say lastly on this part, it's important to recognize the best practices that we found from different youth in the Mediterranean. So I believe a lot of innovation are coming from this region, and playing the role of the technology transfer is important. For example, in Youth in Green Egypt, we are trying to get this kind of integration between the global north and the global south, especially in the Mediterranean. We have this partnership with EIT Climate Tech to adopt the technologies and their methodologies in supporting the entrepreneurs in their countries to do it in Egypt and in other countries with a localized model, so we can accelerate this innovation and we can support the small ventures who are trying to create solutions for the adaptation and to create a commercial model of the adaptation on climate change. And I believe this is important, and to address partnerships and creating this mechanism of financing will get us out of what we are stuck on all the time in the negotiation rooms on the adaptation and what's behind.
Thank you, Muhammad. You mentioned like investment, financing, youth have the power to lead youth-led initiatives to tackle the climate change. I will come back to you after a while to respond on even youth has the power. Do you think that they still be able to affect or to influence policy makers and policy-making process or not? But now let me move to Nirenga. Nirenga, you have worked with some faith organizations like CAICID, and also you are very active in the field of youth. When it comes to religion, do you think that religion has something to do in terms of climate change, and in what ways can faith find its role, especially that we recently witnessed a very active interventions and participation from religious elders from different religions.
That's a very good question. And I think religious and faith-based organization potential in addressing climate is not yet fully utilized. I myself come from the youth sector, and I worked with multiple youth organizations, often secular, and we have often relied on statistics to educate people on climate. And then I joined various academic institutions and studied in 7 universities across 3 continents, trying to find what is the argument that we can make and what type of statistics we need to give people. And what I have learned that often it is not about only statistics. We need to appeal to a different side of a human. It can be the emotional side, or we could speak of someone's higher self. And here we need to speak about values. So not just statistics which can often be manipulated or twisted, and some people do not always trust it, or they think it's perhaps too much of a sacrifice to take certain decision, even though it could be more sustainable. But faith leaders have the capacity to appeal to the value side of people, and that's why I think they have to be involved themselves, as well as young people who are influenced by their spirituality. And here I can share an example of Lithuanian activists who, pre-Christian times, were of indigenous paganic faith who would worship nature. So for these people, cutting down all tree is the same as killing off a human. So when we have the situation now where Lithuania became 2nd biggest wood exporter to IKEA, and our forests are cleared legally and illegally, many people go there and stand in front of the machines, risking their own security to protect the trees. And at the same time, we have some ministers who are completely detached from that side, and they say, but look, this contributes to our GDP, and we will be a developed nation. And some people buy into that, right? Because the science is economy, is GDP, we can compete on the global stage. But then those who are more in touch with the spiritual side have the capacity to say, but listen, we need to adhere to other values and be more in touch with ourselves and our nature. So I think that's one of the biggest roles that faith leaders can play.
Thank you, Nirenga. Actually, you and Mohammed are talking about youth and faith leaders and faith organizations, but both of them are out of the policy-making room. So in this sense, Mohammed, do you think that young people can influence policymakers? If so, would you please share like tangible examples?
This is actually a very good question and important, and we are. I'm relying on all those who are in the room right now to take it into consideration while trying to push any action on ground, because if it's not translated into a policy and there is enforcement of these policies or on a national level, nothing of the discussion that we are trying to push will happen on ground. And this is something that we need to recognize all the time. So influencing the policies is the major important and the most important and substantial action that we need to take it after any discussion, because if it's not happening, nothing is happening on ground. For example, the youth movement, which is part of it, the YOUNGO, the official constituency of youth and children at the UNFCCC, every year, they are trying to push what we call it the Global Youth Statement. The Global Youth Statement is a unified effort coming from the youth through collecting the full demands of the youth over 1 year on different levels, national, regional, and global level. It well crafted and created to address the youth demands on the youth action. And YOUNGO are having around 21 different thematic working group and operational working groups. The thematic working groups is focusing on peace and security, for example, adaptation, mitigation, and one of it, and the most important one, is faith. Because we cannot discuss only everything separately. There should be an inclusion of the different beliefs. And I believe this an important part to push also the opinions of the people in their countries or a national level. They believe on the good and they believe on their gods, and they have different faiths and they are trying to push this. So this is an important role to be recognized and to let their voices heard on this level. So what is the goal of the Global Youth Statement? We try to push an advocacy with the parties here at COP. We go to talk with the parties. Okay, guys, we have the demands of the youth 1, 2, and 3, and we need you to push it on the agenda. We need you to discuss it. And we are trying to lobby by all the meanings that we have. Some of you are seeing marches. Some of you are seeing strikes. Some of you are seeing in behind the negotiations rooms, some youth voluntarily trying to push this agenda with the parties inside the rooms. Some of them are trying to do press conferences. In all means, they are trying to push these demands to be forced as as a text in the COP decision at the end of the day. Then they go to their countries, they go to their national leaders and to tell them, okay, guys, you are pledges and you are committed to this and you are committed to this agenda and this COP decision, you are committed to do so. So please, on a national level, reflect this on your policies. Create reforms of your laws. Create reforms of the executive decision that you have. Ensure that you are reflecting this on your indices. So it's bottom-up approach and it's bottom-down to up. All the youth are trying in the movement to do so, but we are relying also on the other stakeholders to be on ground and to ensure that they are taking what the youth are trying to push into their national levels. Because after COP, after we push this, because we all the time win a very little part. So around 700,000 youth from all over the world contributed this year into the Global Youth Statement. This is incredible number from different regions, from different countries. And the actual youth here trying to advocate for this in different ways that I mentioned, a lot, but very small number compared to this kind of gathering. And the wins in the COP decision will be very minimal. But this small win can reflect on the national indices and can reflect all the time on the policies of the governments in their countries. And this is very important. You guys should recognize this. You should, at all time, trying to advocate whether on a national level or on a regional level or on a global level through the channels. And these different channels will create this momentum at the end of the day. So without policies, of course, all these discussion will went well, and we all the time say, okay, I went to an event or a summit and we spoke, then congratulations, you left home. But this is not such event. This is, at the end of the day, is climate diplomacy, and we should recognize this role and we should continue on it. And I'm very sorry because I should run. So I'm so thankful for being with you guys today. And thank you for inviting me, Yusuf. I believe this discussion should be continued. And we are here all the time to create this momentum, these partnerships. And I believe that you told me once you want to Mediterraneanize me. I am biased to the Mediterranean because I believe I belong to the Mediterranean all the time, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Muhammad, for making it happen to our event, even you have a very hectic schedule. And yes, feel free to leave, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much. Narenga, let me come back to like a critical point. If I put myself in the audience position, some people actually would say that the climate issue is here and the solution is actually next to the next chair. So if we have the issue and we know what we have to do, so what is the obstacle? Why we are very slow in responding to the issue that concerning not only one country, but concerning the entire universe?
Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to solve this in a 1 minute answer. I think at least one of the areas that are challenging is, of course, competing interests. and setting our priorities is this nature over profit. And I want to share a bit some insights on youth participation. And I have to start by saying that I have been converted from someone who was purely on youth participation into someone who's more about intergenerational dialogue. And here I can share a few very short case studies. So initially I was at the Advisory Council on Youth of Council of Europe, and there young people worked together with the ministers on consensus-based decision-making to set the priorities for both funding and policies. And I remember around 5 years ago, we were trying to put climate on the agenda, and the institution, Council of Europe, which mainly works on human rights, law, and democracy, said, but that's not exactly our area of expertise. And then after all the climate protests happened, suddenly the politicians said, well, now it's a hot topic, everyone is doing climate, so we should do it too. So actually young people helped us, being in a more institutionalized advocacy or policy-making space, to put climate on the agenda. At the same time, I am sometimes wary of this almost fetishization of youth as someone really pure and just get a young person in the room and they will solve it because they do not have any personal interest, and as if young people have one opinion, right? But we know the opinions are not monolithic. And I will say, you know, World Bank has youth advisory boards to then help them sell neoliberal policies by saying, listen, young people really thought this is a great deal for you, so we support it for you. There are even younger members, you know, who at one point advised the governments, at the other point joined IKEA boards. So, you know, this is a contentious topic. I do think that young people have a lot of drive and interest to change how the things have been going, especially in the areas of decolonizing climate justice. I think the discussions we're having now, 15 years ago, it would have shocked certain decision makers. Now we can more openly discuss it. And I think, at least from the global north side, I see more open-mindedness in many rooms, perhaps not all. And we also have more capacity to cooperate and sort of convert ourselves in opening our minds and not only kind of advocating for one-sided perspective on behalf of just our nation or on our region.
So you would like to say that every organization should include climate change and climate justice as one of the clusters or the thematic areas that they are focusing on? Like Anna Lindh Foundation, for example, they are not active in the climate change, and I remember that once I approached them and they said, sorry, this is not part of our mandate. Even they are one of the biggest regional organizations in the Euromed region, while their mandate were established like 20 years ago and they didn't add climate change.
Yes, I would join this call for action in adding climate on the strategic priorities of Anna Lindh Foundation and many other foundations. I also sometimes get to share this sustainability checklist that I wrote for the EU Council of Europe Youth Partnership, and it was on greening the youth sector. It mainly involves areas of how to make your organization more green and more sustainable. So how you're organizing events, your digital waste, educational parts, etc. So this, of course, every organization can implement, and I would encourage you to check it out. But for example, when I do present it to the European colleagues who work on youth mobility projects, even on different topics, let's say on gender equality or international education, and if they want to include a climate discussion, I always encourage them to include the decolonized lens on climate, because we don't want, you know, to end up in a space where we're offshoring our environmental damage from Europe, you know, so we make sure that our projects or our organizations are sustainable, but actually whatever products we imported, that was from the forests cleared or from resources that were exploited in other countries. So I think, yes, climate as one of the strategic priorities for every organization, but also making sure that how organizations operate are sustainable. You know, that we're not, I mean, I don't have to explain here about the plastic and so on, but that's also something to consider.
Yeah. Thank you. I think the sustainability checklist would be kind of interest to the colleagues at the Muslim Council of Elders. Maybe they can promote it among the alliance that they just created for the Faith Pavilion. I think we only have 6-7 minutes left, and we would like to do final two main things. We have a youth-led initiative that we're already implemented in El Alamein city, which is one of the newest cities in Egypt. And there is a very short video I would like to invite you to watch it. And then we would like to hear from your side, because our organization actually has access to the ECOSOC, and in the next General Assembly, we would be able to submit statement or to submit policy papers. We would like to hear from you if you have a message, if you have a recommendation that we can bring it up to the table in the next year General Assembly. So the video is ready. Thank you for watching. Now the floor is open. Maybe we are seeking 2-3 interventions. And yes, please, can you give the mic?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Mohamedou Saidou Balde, and I'm from Guinea-Bissau. I actually came late. I'm not really into what was the, but at least, well, talking about climate change, it's also talking about climate, social justice, education, and etc. Since this is a fifth pavilion, I would like to know if your organization also support initiatives in order to build the schools, especially one of the challenges that we have in my country, and I can say in some West African countries, is that in many villages, for example, because of the lack of access to schools, especially to learn Quran as a Muslims, they sent their children to Dakar, to Senegal, especially Guinea-Bissau and Senegal, in order to learn Quran, and they end up being street kids. And I have been into this for 3 years. So I would like to know if you support initiatives that want to build the skills in order to avoid this kind of activities. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. On behalf of MYF, we are not in charge of building formal schools because this is not the track that we are following. But you mentioned that supporting initiatives, building the capacities. We are doing that through the non-formal education. We focus on youth with a few opportunities who lives in the borders, in the countryside, and we bring them to build their social skills, life skills, in order to enable them to be active in society in one way, and the second way to be able to join the labor market. But we are not building infrastructure as school or formal education, I think this is like role of another organization, but not ours. But we are very active in non-formal education, and we use it as a tool even to raise awareness about climate change or to promote the principles of the Human Fraternity document or any other projects that we are implementing. But I totally agree that education has a lot to do. Please.
Thank you, and must appreciate your contribution and sharing. I haven't introduced myself, just brief. So I am Pinaki, I'm from India. I used to work with Green Faith as a country director, and I was involved with UNEP for a program called Faith for Earth Counselor. Now, my suggestion or your reflection would be that the program Faith for Earth Counselor, which was run by UNEP and other partners, had a unique intervention of youth faith-based leaders. People who probably are not, religious, but they are passionate in following theology and climate change and environment as part of their career. Now, I think you people and with KAICIID, they have, KAICIID has done a lot of work, and your work is truly inspiring. Thank you. So, I think one of the suggestions would be to include youth and to check them if they have some career options on developing on their path of connecting faith and environmental conservation. Because there are very few people, religious leaders, who are they preach actually. But there are very few options for the young people to take action on that. For example, you guys are sitting here, you are yourself an inspiration. And this must congratulate the presidency of COP28 for having a very dedicated faith pavilion. In fact, in Sharm el-Sheikh, it was just a reflection. We had a huge faith thing, but in here we can see the physical manifestation. So I think there has to be some kind of disruptive thinking on part of youth and faith leaders on how to bring them closer and to give them opportunities which were not existent before. That would be my suggestion. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. This is very accurate recommendation, and I just wrote it down.
Hi, I'm Joel Kelling. I'm from the Anglican Alliance, the Anglican Church Development, Relief and Advocacy Wing. I'm based in Amman in Jordan, and I work regionally. So Egypt, Palestine, Israel, and Lebanon are part of the area, and Cyprus as well. So I have two short questions, and I would like answers. That'd be good. So one is on the challenge of civil society space, particularly in the Shams part of the Mediterranean region. I work with a very institutionalized structure with a lot of hierarchy. How are you working with churches and mosques in terms of how you engage youth so that it can be impactful inside those communities? First question. And the second one is, youth have a habit of growing up and getting old, and I'm one of those people that's got old. What is your work looking at about how you create spaces for those that you've invested efforts in so that they continue to have a meaningful impact, draw more people through, and have a meaningful role to play in climate negotiations as adults and older youth, as I would like to try and claim to be myself?
Would you like to answer the second question? So I think I will answer the first question, and my colleague Naringa will answer the second one. Very quickly, in public spaces, I prefer to answer very honestly or to say I cannot answer. And in this situation, I will be very honest and very direct. The civil society organizations in the Southern Mediterranean region are facing crazy challenges. Let's make it clear enough. And these challenges not only related to the capacity building or the human resources or the finance, but it's actually related to the bureaucratic procedures that you have to follow with the government, with the officials in order to implement the project. If I have time, I would take you in a journey, a very long one. If we want to start the project from the scratch until we implement it, what are the procedures and the steps that we have to be followed in order to implement the project? This is one point. The second point, many organizations in this region appeared, and after 2, 3, 5 years, unfortunately, they are not existed anymore. And we are really afraid that our experience at the Mediterranean Youth Foundation might be a victim and will disappear in a few years. Because We are doing our best to respond to these challenges, but you know, our patience has a limit, and the patience box is very small, especially after 5 years of surviving. At the same time, I would like to be honest again and say that in Egypt, for example, the Egyptian government is trying to support, but at the same time, the country in general it's not stable, and when it comes to civil society or non-formal organizations, they are a bit concerned what we are doing, who is supporting us, and why. The question why is very important, and we totally respect and understand this, but at the same time, we want to be active in society. We want to be part of the picture, not as decoration, but as actual participation and representation.
The question of youth, which sometimes is also challenging to define. I think a few good case practices and also implemented by MYF is involving these people as advisors. I mean, either in a mentorship capacity or advisory board capacity, so they can still be engaged. Another option is focusing a bit more on intergenerational dialogue. I myself, when I organize events, I don't even ask for the age, even if it's youth-focused activity. Like, if you feel young at heart and you want to join the youth discussion, you're welcome. And for the faith-based organizations, so I will share the good case practice of KSEED, where recently we wrote a research study on how to empower youth to get more involved, and their approach was to kind of sell this to the religious leaders to involve more young people in their communities, and that was not only on paper. In their actual forum, they would involve the religious, like priests, Buddhist monks, etc., and young people to discuss certain topics of interest. So it could be climate change, it could be addressing hate speech in their community. So I think both in policy and practice, if we facilitate this intergenerational dialogue, that's one of the ways forward.
Thank you so much. Actually, we exactly on time. Really appreciating your active participation and your recommendations, also the questions, and hopefully we will be in touch. I think if we can go to the last slide, if you would like to be in touch, if you are active in the Mediterranean or would like to be in the future, we will be more than happy to cooperate and to discover potentials for cooperation in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mediterranean Youth Foundation. Now we're going to have a fireside chat with Nuri Turkal, who's a commissioner with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.